Right now, somewhere in America, somebody is ruining their financial future over a purchase they will barely remember in 6 months. Not a mansion, not a Ferrari, not some giant reckless decision. Something small, something emotional. A late-night Amazon order. A pair of sneakers bought after a stressful day. A kitchen gadget they saw on TikTok. A limited-time deal that made their brain panic for 10 seconds. And here's the terrifying part. Most people never realize how much money they lose from emotional buying because they only see the price of the item. They never see the hidden cost of the impulse itself. Because every impulse purchase steals from your future twice. First, it takes your money. Then it trains your brain to keep chasing temporary dopamine instead of long-term freedom. That is why the average American spends over $18,000 every year on non-essential purchases. And according to behavioral finance researchers, most impulse purchases happen within minutes of desire appearing. Minutes. That is all it takes for emotion to overpower logic, which is exactly why one tiny habit quietly changed thousands of lives financially. The 24-hour rule. Simple enough to sound stupid, powerful enough to save people tens of thousands of dollars over their lifetime. Here's how it works. Any non-essential purchase above a certain amount, maybe $30, maybe $50, maybe $100, you force yourself to wait 24 hours before buying it. That's it. No complicated investing strategy, no budgeting spreadsheet, no extreme frugal lifestyle, just time. Because time kills emotional spending. And companies know this better than anyone. That's why modern shopping is designed to eliminate waiting completely. One-click checkout, instant financing, same-day delivery, countdown timers. Only 2 left. Buy now. Limited stock. Modern business understands something deeply uncomfortable about human psychology. The faster you buy emotionally, the less likely you are to think rationally. So they remove every second possible between desire and purchase. And honestly, it works frighteningly well. This is Ethan, 27 years old, good job, not irresponsible, not financially illiterate, just normal, like millions of Americans. Ethan did not think he had a spending problem because every purchase felt reasonable by itself. $30 here, $60 there, $100 during a stressful week, food delivery after long work days, random tech accessories, clothes bought from social media ads, tiny upgrades constantly entering his life. Nothing felt dangerous individually. That is why impulse spending becomes dangerous quietly. Nobody destroys their finances with one purchase. They destroy them through repeated emotional spending patterns that slowly become automatic behavior. One night, Ethan opened his banking app and saw something strange. Despite earning decent money, despite working full-time, despite not living extravagantly, he barely had savings. And the worst part, he genuinely could not explain where most of the money went. That is when he discovered something called lifestyle leakage, the invisible process where small convenience spending slowly drains massive amounts of money over years without triggering alarm bells. Researchers at Duke University found that nearly half of daily behaviors are automatic habits, not conscious decisions. That means most spending is not rational calculation. It is repetition, emotional routine, environmental triggers, which means if you want to change your finances, you don't just need more money. You need interruption points between emotion and action. That interruption is exactly what the 24-hour rule creates. Ethan decided to try it for 1 month. Every non-essential purchase had to survive 24 hours before he could buy it. The results shocked him almost immediately. Day 1, he almost bought expensive sneakers after seeing an Instagram ad. The next morning, he did not even want them anymore. 2 days later, he almost ordered takeout after a stressful meeting. The craving disappeared after an hour. A week later, he nearly financed a new iPad because it was only $43 a month. 24 hours later, he realized he barely even needed it. And that is when Ethan understood something terrifying. Most of his spending was not based on need. It was based on temporary emotion, stress, boredom, insecurity, excitement, comparison. Modern shopping platforms understand these emotions incredibly well, better than most people understand themselves. Why do you think online shopping peaks late at night? Why do ads follow you across apps after you view something once? Because repetition increases emotional attachment. Why do stores play certain music, use certain lighting, create urgency, and offer instant financing? Because human beings are emotionally predictable, and trillion-dollar industries are built around that predictability. The average person believes they make logical purchasing decisions. Behavioral economists have spent decades proving the opposite. Most spending decisions happen emotionally first. Logic enters afterward to justify the emotion. That is why people say things like, "I deserved it. It was on sale. I needed a reward." It's basically an investment. The brain is incredibly skilled at defending emotional behavior once desire appears, which is why waiting becomes so powerful. Because after 24 hours, emotion weakens and logic gets louder. Suddenly the purchase looks different. The excitement fades. The urgency disappears. Ethan started noticing patterns almost immediately. He wanted to buy things most when he felt stressed, lonely, insecure, bored, or tired. Not because he truly needed anything, because buying temporarily changed his emotional state. That realization changed how he viewed money forever. Because he realized modern consumer culture does not just sell products anymore. It sells emotional relief. Feeling behind in life? Buy something. Had a hard day? Buy something. Feeling insecure? Upgrade something. Feeling bored? Order something. Social media quietly amplifies this cycle every single day. Somebody posts a vacation. Somebody upgrades apartments. Somebody buys a luxury car. Somebody shows a productive lifestyle online. And suddenly millions of people subconsciously feel inadequate without realizing why. Then advertisements arrive at the perfect moment, offering emotional escape disguised as products. That is why the 24-hour rule works so well psychologically. It separates temporary emotion from permanent financial decisions. Most impulses die in silence when given enough time. In fact, studies on delayed gratification repeatedly show that humans make dramatically better long-term decisions when forced to pause before reward. The famous Stanford marshmallow experiment became one of the most important psychological studies ever conducted because it revealed something massive about human behavior. The ability to delay gratification strongly predicts long-term success. Not intelligence, not talent, not luck. Self-control. Which means the 24-hour rule is not really about shopping. It is about training your brain to stop obeying every emotional impulse immediately. That skill affects everything: money, health, productivity, relationships, business, investing. Almost every successful long-term outcome in life requires resisting short-term emotional comfort, and modern life constantly attacks that ability. Infinite scrolling destroyed attention spans. One-click shopping destroyed patience. Fast entertainment destroyed boredom tolerance. Food delivery destroyed delayed gratification. Everything became instant, which means people slowly lost the ability to sit with desire without immediately satisfying it. Ethan kept using the rule for months, and something strange happened. His spending dropped massively without feeling restrictive, because he was not forcing himself to never buy enjoyable things. He was simply removing emotional reactions from financial decisions. Some purchases still survived the 24 hours, and those purchases usually turned out to matter more, because intentional spending feels different psychologically than impulsive spending. One creates guilt, the other creates satisfaction. That difference matters more than people realize. Impulse purchases often create temporary excitement, followed by emotional flatness. But intentional purchases usually create longer-lasting value because they align with actual priorities instead of temporary feelings. Ethan also noticed another benefit nobody talks about enough. The 24-hour rule reduced clutter in his life. Less random junk, less unused technology, less buyer's remorse, less mental noise. Modern consumer culture convinces people that happiness constantly lives in the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next package, the next delivery notification. But eventually people realize something uncomfortable. Consumption has diminishing emotional returns. The first purchase feels exciting. The 50th barely registers emotionally at all, which is why some people endlessly consume while still feeling strangely empty. Because they are not solving emotional problems, they are distracting themselves temporarily from them. The average American home now contains over 300,000 items, according to professional organizing studies. Think about that for a second. 300,000 items. Yet anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction continue rising. More stuff did not create more peace. If anything, for many people, it created more overwhelm. Ethan started redirecting money differently once he saw how much impulse spending had been leaking from his life. He built emergency savings, started investing, paid down debt faster. And here's the crazy part. His income never changed. Only his reaction speed changed. That is what makes this rule so powerful. Most people believe financial improvement requires massive sacrifice or huge income increases. Sometimes it simply requires creating distance between emotion and action, because financial destruction rarely happens dramatically. It happens quietly, repeatedly, automatically, one emotional decision at a time, one treat yourself moment at a time, one stress purchase at a time, one bored purchase at a time, one social comparison at a time, until eventually people wake up wondering why they still feel financially trapped despite years of working hard. The answer is often not income alone. It is unconscious leakage, tiny repeated behaviors silently shaping financial outcomes over decades. Warren Buffett once said, "If you buy things you do not need, soon you will have to sell things you do need." That sentence becomes more terrifying the older people get, because time magnifies financial habits massively. $10 wasted occasionally feels harmless. $10 wasted repeatedly for decades becomes thousands. The problem is human beings are emotionally bad at understanding long-term accumulation. People dramatically underestimate the power of repeated small behaviors, both positive and negative. That is why habits quietly become destiny. Ethan eventually created an even stronger version of the rule. Purchases above $200 required 72 hours. Purchases above $1,000 required 1 full week. And amazingly, many large purchases disappeared entirely before the waiting period even ended. Because urgency is often artificial. Companies manufacture urgency because urgency weakens critical thinking. Real value survives waiting. Manipulation usually does not. Here is the important part, though. The 24-hour rule is not about never enjoying life. It is not about becoming emotionally cold toward money. It is about becoming intentional instead of reactive. There is nothing wrong with buying things you genuinely value. The danger is buying emotionally without awareness, because emotional spending creates invisible financial damage that compounds for years. Most people do not realize how much freedom disappears through unconscious spending habits. Financial freedom is not only about earning more, it is also about preventing unnecessary leaks. Imagine somebody making decent money for 20 years, but constantly leaking hundreds every month through emotional spending. That is not just money lost. That is lost investments, lost compounding, lost opportunities, lost flexibility, lost peace of mind. The tragedy is, most people never calculate the future value of small spending habits. $100 invested monthly for decades can become enormous. But $100 emotionally spent disappears forever. And modern culture constantly encourages immediate consumption over long-term ownership. Why save when you can finance? Why wait when you can order instantly? Why build patience when the entire economy profits from impulsiveness? The system is not designed to encourage restraint. It is designed to maximize consumption, which means protecting your financial future increasingly requires protecting your attention and emotions first.
Because whoever controls your impulses eventually controls your wallet. After 1 year using the 24-hour rule, Ethan described it this way. It felt like I finally became conscious of my spending instead of sleepwalking through it. And honestly, that might be the perfect description of modern consumer behavior. Sleepwalking, automatic reactions, constant stimulation, endless consumption without reflection. Most people are not intentionally wasting money. They are reacting emotionally without realizing it. One stressful day becomes online shopping. One boring night becomes random Amazon orders. One moment of insecurity becomes an expensive purchase that promises confidence for a few hours. The dangerous part is not the item itself. It is the habit underneath it. Because repeated emotional spending slowly becomes identity. and identities quietly shape financial futures. That is why the 24-hour rule matters so much. It interrupts the autopilot. It creates one small moment where logic gets a chance to speak before emotion spends the money. Sometimes that single pause changes everything. Because once people realize how many purchases were emotional instead of meaningful, they never see spending the same way again. Awareness changes behavior. Unconscious habits control people. Conscious habits can be changed. The goal is not perfection. Nobody becomes disciplined overnight. The goal is creating space between feeling and spending. Space creates awareness. Awareness creates control. Control creates freedom. And that freedom is worth far more than another temporary purchase. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not financial advisors and are not responsible for any financial decisions, losses, or actions taken based on this content. Always do your own research and consult a qualified financial professional before making financial decisions.